Yo, welcome back to AP World History. Today's going to be Unit 2, Day 4. Some reminders before we get started. Please make sure you have your history notebook out and taking notes as we move through the video. And please make sure you complete the vocabulary for this video, which will be on the next slide and down in the description as always. So the key terms for today: the Peace of Westphalia, balance of power, nation-state, capitalism, price revolution, joint stock company, Adam Smith, urbanization, Zheng He, Christopher Columbus, the 3Gs of God, Gold, and Glory, magnetic compass, Astrolabe, Lanteen, sails, Caravels, Prince Henry the Navigator, Vazco de Gama, Magellon, Royal Colony, Proprietor Colony, and now the Alhambra Decree. Some key concepts for today are going to be the economic development in Western Europe during the early modern period, the causes and effect of European exploration in the early modern period, and the methods of colonization in the early modern period. So, with the Peace of Westphalia, which again was the Treaty of Westphalia, which ended the 30-Year War, again, just a reminder, this allowed princes and kings to dictate and determine the religion of their holdings. This is really going to be the start of nations really beginning and kind of kingdoms really beginning to kind of form as what are modern day countries. But there also has to be a balance of power where no state is allowed to dominate others. Diplomacy is based off alliance systems and things, right? This keeps one country from gaining too much power. If one country gains too much power, the others will kind of balance out that power by stopping that one country from gaining all that much power. The way to do this is through military development, which is going to be costly and competitive. You're always trying to be better than the people around you to make sure that you are able to stop them if they gain too much powerful. New armaments such as cannons and small arms, the arabesques and the muskets. And this is really happening in Europe, in some parts of northern Africa, but in China, India, and Islamic states, we're not able to keep pace with this. This is really going to allow for Europeans to really kind of push in and gain dominance in trade. As I said again, this is going to be the time of when nations really become kind of what they are today. This is called a nation state. They have a common ethnicity, land, and history. So if you're from the Kingdom of France, you are French. If you're from the Kingdom of England, you are English. And the belief in that these new nation states became a popular ideology, and the love for your nation above others becomes known as nationalism. So somebody is French, someone is English, someone is Italian, someone is Portuguese. Right? And this also leads to a few other things, especially religious, due to the uprisings of Protestant and Catholic Reformation. They really begin to translate the Bible into those languages. So you have a French Bible, which is the Bible in French. You have an English Bible, you have an Italian Bible, right, and so on and so forth. And this kind of allows people to really become more in line with their nation. Right? This is a map that shows the examples of these monarchical nation states. Again, these are really becoming kind of nations as we know them today. Like the Kingdom of Spain is modern day Spain. Kingdom of France, maybe a little bigger now, but it's France. England is England. The Netherlands they become the Netherlands, right? Portugal is still Portugal. Right? Hey, but with population growth, right, American foods are going to improve European nutrition. They get more calories. That means if you can eat well, you can explore well, you can populate well, right? This increases population, but at the same time, due to the hardiness of the food, this increases resistance to kind of diseases, and we don't really see a lot of mass death diseases after 1650. There will be some diseases like the Spanish flu that are going to wipe out couple million people, but it's not going to be the widespread 1/3 of European population just dead. By between 1500 and 1800, the population in Europe is going to rise by a little under 100 million people. That's 1/3 of the United States today. So they're going to go from 80 to 180 in 300 years. Well, you have this big increase in population. This leads to increased urbanization. And urbanization really becomes the most dramatic in Ireland, England, Poland, France, and the Netherlands. Cities become increasingly important as administrative, commercial, intellectual centers due to that, hey, that's where the people are, that's where people live, right? That's where they're going to be. Right? And due to these kind of concentration of people in these urban centers, this leads to kind of changes in thinking for how profits and money should work and the expansion of that profit and money. Medieval theologians, profit was selfish. So the medieval times before the Renaissance, profit was selfish. In the Renaissance and the Reformation, they had a more positive view on profit because, hey, we're letting go of the reins. You guys can be more independent, so you guys need money. Of course, we talked about the Florentine city-states, these early Italian kind of capitalist kind of trade areas. And, due to capitalism, this leads to an increased influence of this kind of urban middle class. This is also going to alter rural society or farming society. This is going to improve material standards, increased independence of rural workers. And this is also going to lead to, it's not a positive, but it also leads to the price revolution. Due to colonies and mercantilism, we have more imports of gold and silver, which lead to trade imbalances, which lead to inflation. If you have more silver, if you have more money in the system, your silver is going to be worth less. Think about today in the United States. If the dollar's worth $1 with the current amount of money, if you double that amount of money, that means your dollar's worth 50 cents. Same thing happens with the price of silver and gold. Right? And inflation, right? If things cost more, that means your wages are going to go down in order for the people who own the company to keep their wages and to keep their profits. Now, of course, we need to know about what the commercial revolution is. The commercial revolution is that period of growth in Europe from the 13th to 18th centuries, or 1200 to the 1700s. This includes trade, colonies, mercantilism, capitalism. Now, the nature of capitalism is really the government is not controlling what you're doing and how you trade. You can trade with other countries. You can trade with other people. If your country doesn't have it, you can get it from another country. Capitalism is a very private enterprise. And new institutions and services kind of rise to support this new capitalist ideas, such as banks, insurance, stock exchanges, and joint stock companies, new communication and transportation. Next is going to be joint stock companies. The way a joint stock company works is that a group of people get together, they kind of pool all of their money, and go to the king and ask to set up a colony in newly discovered lands, such as the Americas or the Pacific Islands, or India, or any place in the Indian Ocean that the Europeans colonized. And people come to own a percentage of these companies. Now, when they set up the new colony after permission and all that, say if you own 10% of the joint stock company, that means you get 10% of the profits that joint stock that company makes. This is where the modern day stocks exchange kind of really starts to form. So if there's 1 million shares of Coca-Cola and I own 10% of those shares, that means I get 10% of all the dividends of profit that those shares create. This is also going to be the rise of manufacturing, with colonial markets and population creating more raw materials and increased population stimulating manufacturing. and the development of the putting out system in the 17th and 18th centuries. Many entrepreneurs that are really leaning into the capitalism are going to bypass all these guilds and regulations and kind of move the production to the countryside so they have less oversight, meaning that they can have more profit. Capitalism is actively supported by the governments, but not controlled by the governments. So in England and Netherlands especially, the government's really going to lean into this. Like, hey, if you make more money, it means I can tax you more, which means I get more wealth because you're making more money. Now, capitalism won't get a name until Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations. Adam Smith is really the kind of founder of capitalism and society. And what he says is society will prosper as individuals pursue their own interests. States were created to support private interest and free trade. This is how the United States, at the beginning, when it's founded, is going to really kind of lean into. Now, European exploration really kind of can, the way they explore can kind of go back to Chengo Ho or Zheng He and the Ming Dynasty. Remember, he's going to explore vastly, but remember the Ming Dynasty is going to call him back. The Portuguese are really going to dominate Indian Ocean trade, and especially the Portuguese are going to dominate trade in the 1500s or the 16th century. Of course, we got the guy Christopher Columbus, right, the famous explorer, in hope of reaching Asia to kind of bypass all of Africa and maybe even bypass some of the Muslim traders if they go through the Red Sea. He's going to sail west in search of Asia, but in 1492 he's going to lead 3 ships to the Caribbean Sea. He's going to run into the Americas, which is going to cause a whole host of other issues. He believed that he's in the East Indies, close to Japan, but he really discovered the Americas for the Europeans. Now, of course, the motives for exploration, the Portuguese are in search of fresh resources because they can't expand in Europe because they're a fairly small country with Spain right there. They're going to establish sugar plantations in Azores and Madeira. And they're really going to kind of try to and create direct trade without Muslim intermediaries. And they're really going to become the dominant force before the British really kind of, and English really kind of take over of the Asian spice trade. Now, the big 3 motives of exploration is going to be gold, God, and glory. Right? You're trying to gold for wealth, glory for fame, and God for religious expansion. New technologies help Europeans travel the world. The stern post rudder, 2 types of sails, new types of ships. You have sails that can sail against the wind. New navigational instruments such as the magnetic compass and the Astrolabe. Caravels with their new type of faster ship. Of course, the Lanteen sails, and also they really input that kind of scientifics into it. With the knowledge of how winds and currents work, they can now plan their routes accordingly. Now, our big voyages and exploration. Of course, we have Henrique, King of Portugal, or Prince Henry the Navigator. The Portuguese are really going to conquer North Africa, establish trading posts in West Africa. The Portuguese explorer of Diaz were on the Cape of Good Hope and entered the Indian Ocean in 1488. We know that we have Vazco de Gama of Portugal. He crossed the Indian Ocean to reach India in 1497. And by 1500, the Portuguese are establishing trading outposts in India, in Calcutta, which is really going to be kind of the first European foothold in the Indian Ocean. Permanent foothold in the Indian Ocean. Other voyages, of course, we have Ferdinand Magellon. He's going to be the first... he's a Portuguese navigator in service of Spain. He's going to be the first person to circumnavigate the globe, which means he goes all around the globe. This is going to happen between 1519 and 1522. The full exploration of the Pacific will take 3 centuries to complete. And it'll take even longer to fully chart out and map out all of those islands. The French, English, and Dutch are also going to start to establish themselves in the Americas and the Caribbean and Asia. The French are going to control North America, the Caribbean, India. The English will control North America, the Caribbean, South Africa, and India. The Dutch will be North America, South Africa, and Southeast Asia. Then we have the introduction of Manila galleons, which are really going to be the main form of communication and trade between the Philippines and Spain. So these are ships that are going to cross the Atlantic into the Pacific and up to the Philippines, or down around the Cape of Good Hope and over to the Philippines. By the 18th century or the 1700s, Europeans had a pretty accurate knowledge of the world, where everything was, and that's how we get our modern day kind of maps. Right? Not everything's great though, right? With the expansion of religious kind of fervism in Europe and the really kind of rise of Christianity, we get what is known as the Alhambra Decree, which is going to be the expulsion of Jews from Spain and Portugal. This is going to be issued by Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain in 1492, and basically this was to the Jewish people: convert to Catholicism or leave. And they kind of mark this as eliminating fake Christians, and between 40,000 and 100,000 Jewish people from Spain and Portugal are going to be kind of expelled and kind of forced to other parts of Europe. Now, before we end off for today, I do want to talk about the types of colonies. There are three main types of colonies. You have a royal colony, where the king appoints the governors and leads the colonies. This is really going to be Spanish and Portuguese. This is where the government has a real hand in that colony and how that colony is governed. We also have joint stock company. These are business colonies. Businesses set up the colonies and are in charge of it. This is going to be mainly French, Dutch, and the British East India Company. Then we have Proprietor Colony, where one or more people have complete control and ownership of that colony. This will be known as Pennsylvania. So, with that, we're going to stop for today. Please make sure you're following along with your notes, and that you're completing the vocabulary at the beginning of this video and down in the description. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys in class.